Well, I guess this is going to be the Halloween episode. I don't really have any haunted fans or anything like that to show, or any orange and black fans or anything like that. So I guess the best that I'm going to be able to do is show you guys a dead fan. This fan is deader than a doornail. Got nothing. This is a Sanyo 12-inch fan. I would guess from the early to mid 1960s. And I'm not sure what's wrong with it. Couldn't find anything obviously wrong with it. But I'm currently without a multimeter, so I couldn't really properly troubleshoot it. But I did take it apart and try to make some observations, try to come up with something. And the fan's in surprisingly good condition. I mean, I didn't really see anything that was burned up or anything like that, but so who knows. But it was kind of surprising to see how little this fan has changed over the years, from between like the early 60s up to the late 70s Galaxy Lasco fans. I mean, even this metal, this whole thing is metal, even the blade's metal, but you can kind of, if you look at this motor housing, I mean, it still has the general shape. Like you could see the genesis of the Galaxy, the blue blade or amber blade or whatever you've got, Lasco fan. This is like the genesis of it here. But it's all metal, but you can see the basic shape of it is there. Got this classic Sanyo guard here with this braided power cord. I used a lot of this insulating stuff. I don't know what that is. That, see it there, and then you see it here. The power cord comes in, and then they also use, it looks like they use that stuff on the feet of the fan also. It was Dr. Messiah's fan, I guess. But here's the feet. You can see they use that crusty stuff for the feet too. It's weird. Sanyo EF 8 something E, stamped, not printed. Getting a little shaky because this fan's heavy, but I'm trying to read the stamp. Sanyo Electric, made in Japan. 30 centimeters. What makes me think this is probably from the early 60s is that if you look at the base here, it has kind of a hump to it. And the fans, the Sanyo fans that I've seen from the 50s, they have kind of a hump shape that was even more rounded than this, but there was a rotary switch here, and then this seems like kind of the next progression with a push button here, but it still has the hump shape of it towards the front. And then by the late 60s, this started to flatten out, and the neck here became more narrow. And then of course by the early 70s, this was pretty much completely flat, like low profile, completely flat. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about if you look at the early Lasko Galaxy fans or the early 70s Sanyo fans. It seems like the profile of the base just got shorter or low profile. Has a screw-in oscillator here, oil ports, and there's some residue there. Somebody's been oiling the fan. One over the front bearing as well. Metal blade, you can see the set screw in there. I had a really hard time trying to get the set screw to come loose. It was seized up in there pretty good, but I got it. So anyway, I found this fan on Etsy, of all places. With shipping, it was like $40 or something. So I don't know, I'm a little stuck on, there's not much I can do about it, but I haven't left any feedback yet. They did not specify that the fan didn't work. They didn't specify that it did work. They just said that it would need to be cleaned. But again, the total cost of the fan for me was probably about as much as it cost them to ship it. So, and even though it doesn't work, I still haven't figured out what I have to do to get it going. It seems like it's in pretty good shape, all things considered. So if I can get it going with minimal work done to the fan, then it'll definitely be worth it, I think. Minimal cost and minimal effort to get it going, it would still be worth it. But it's, yeah, I don't know. I bought a fan from that seller once before, and that fan worked. Didn't have any issues with it. But this one, clearly, nothing. Still a really cool fan. Metal base, metal blade, metal motor housing. The only plastic I see is on the face of the switch plate here, the switches themselves, and then this this band here. That's the only plastic I see on the fan. So I went ahead and took the fan apart, just trying to make some observations of what I could figure out was wrong with it. Couldn't come up with anything, but I'll splice in the videos that I took from that so you guys can see what the fan looks like disassembled. So I'll splice those in now, and as always, thanks for watching, and happy Halloween. We're looking at the underside of the fan now. I've removed the bottom part of the base, and here's the switch. Everything looks fairly clean. I mean, there was a little layer of dust that I just wiped off of it, but Everything looks to be connected pretty well. There's not a lot of buildup, dust buildup or anything in there that would prevent contact. Everything looks to be in place here. I don't see any damage or anything like that. No obvious signs of shorts or broken wires or anything. So that's the speed selector switch. Power coming in is connected. Everything appears to be groovy there. So yeah, I don't know. We'll take a look at the motor now, see what kind of observations we can make there. All right, well, we're looking at the motor now, and it's surprisingly not that dirty. It's definitely dusty, but it's not the kind of accumulation that I would expect for some kind of overheating incident. Looks like all the connections are still solid. And the windings are dusty, but I don't see any kind of charring or anything like that. They look pretty good, actually. Bearings are pretty free. Look at the size of this capacitor. 2 microfarad capacitor. Pretty primitive looking capacitor. Again, we've got some dust, but that's pretty typical. I don't think that that's too bad. What's interesting looking at this is it really resembles like an 1980s Lasco Galaxy motor, although this has oil ports. See the wick down in there? And there was some oil residue on the top of the motor housing, so somebody had to be oiling it. But what's also interesting is to see the things that are metal on this motor that eventually turn to plastic. Most notably the oscillator housing. And then the physical size of the capacitors just got smaller with time. Yeah, I don't see any observable obvious problems here. But anyway, just wanted to let you guys see the motor, because I don't know how many people actually get a chance to see one of these motors from the 60s. It looks pretty much like what they were using in the late 70s, early 80s. It's just a little more primitive. That's probably not the right word for it. Primitive probably isn't. It's simpler and it's higher quality. But the physical materials are probably more expensive, I would say. So yeah, there it is. Alright, well, it wasn't necessarily in the plans, but I decided to split the motor just because it was so easy to do so. It really shows that they don't make them like they used to. So here's the motor shaft. Windings on the motor shaft, or on the rotor rather, don't really have much visible wear at all. As you can see, there's still plenty of wet grease here. There's oil still on the shaft. Quite a bit of dust in there too, but on the front side as well, still wet. Shaft looks good, rotor looks good. Back side of the windings here. I don't see where anything looks like it got too hot. Of course, I don't always exactly know what I'm looking for either, so I don't profess to know much about electric motors, just what I've seen for myself over time and a few videos here and there that I've watched. And that wick is still completely saturated with oil. Lubrication was definitely not an option or problem here. See some wet oil. Can't really get a very good look at the wick, but I can tell that everything in there is still wet, which is pretty incredible. For a 50-plus-year-old fan. And the motor, I mean, the basic design of the motor here is what they were using through the 70s and up until, I would say, the mid 80s is when it started to change. Even then, it didn't really change much. It just, some of the quality declined. They started to cheapen out a little bit in the components, but that's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess. But anyway, yeah, that's the motor. Not totally split. I did leave connected what I could leave connected while still able to get a look at the motor shaft and the bearings and better look inside the motor. But yeah, I don't see any where anything looks fried anyway. I don't see any evidence of failure here. So I'm optimistic that this fan will live soon enough.